The road up to Lake Hartwell always smelled like pine and damp earth in early October. I'd made the drive from Raleigh 100 times since buying the cabin 8 years ago. It was my reset button: 2 bedrooms, a stone fireplace, a dock my dad and I rebuilt before he passed. I hadn't been up in almost 6 months. Work had swallowed the summer. I told myself I'd winterize the place in November instead. That Saturday, I finally cleared a weekend and drove up without calling anyone. I didn't think I needed to. Half a mile from the driveway, I noticed tire tracks in the gravel. Fresh ones. I told myself it was probably the neighbor using the turnaround again. Then I saw the minivan. Not just a minivan, 2 vehicles. A charcoal SUV I didn't recognize and a silver Honda Odyssey with a den I knew too well. Claire's. I slowed, confused more than alarmed. When I pulled into my own driveway, there were plastic toys scattered in the yard. A basketball hoop leaned against the shed. Someone had strung fairy lights across the porch railing. They weren't mine. The front curtains were different too. I stood there for a moment with my keys in my hand. Like maybe I'd misremembered the address. The door opened before I could knock. Claire looked almost annoyed to see me. She said, like I'd arrived without warning to a dinner party. "You're here. Why are you here?" I asked. She folded her arms. "We're staying for a while." Inside, I could hear children arguing. Her husband Mark's voice drifted from the kitchen. And another voice, his mother's. I stepped past Claire without asking permission. The air smelled like frying oil and something floral I didn't own. My framed lake photos were gone from the hallway. The throw blanket my dad used was missing from the couch. A large beige sectional had replaced my smaller one. It didn't even fit the room properly. "What is this?" I asked, still trying to keep my voice level. Claire sighed like I was being dramatic. "You never use it, Megan. It just sits empty." "It's October," I said. "You weren't here all summer." That was true. But that wasn't the point. On the kitchen counter were unopened envelopes. Duke Energy. Water service, all addressed to me. A few were stamped past DUE. My chest tightened. Not with rage. With recognition. Claire had always blurred lines. Borrowed clothes without asking. Used my credit card. Just until payday. Assumed access was the same as permission. I had spent most of my life correcting gently instead of correcting clearly. Mark appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He smiled tightly. "Hey Megan, we figured family wouldn't mind." Behind him, his mother stood at the stove like she owned it. "How long have you been here?" I asked. "Since July," Claire said. Mark's job situation changed. It made sense. It made sense to them. "You changed the furniture," I said quietly. "It was outdated," she replied. Something inside me went still. "You can't just move into my house." Claire laughed, a short, incredulous sound. "It's not like you're using it. That doesn't make it yours." Her expression hardened. "Don't start this. The kids are settled. They're enrolled at the elementary school in town. We've put money into this place. With my utilities," I said. Her jaw tightened. Mark stepped in. "Let's not escalate. We're all adults." "I agree," I said. "So here's the adult part. You need to pack your things." Claire stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "No," she said flatly. The word hung there. "No." I repeated. "You can't just throw us out," she said. "We've established residency. If you try anything, I'll call the police." Her voice had grown louder, confident, performative. For a second the old instinct surfaced, the one that avoided scenes. The one that smoothed things over. That offered compromise even when none was deserved. Then I looked at the stack of unpaid bills again. "Go ahead," I said. "What?" "Call the police." She blinked, thrown off by the absence of resistance. "You think they'll side with you?" she asked. "I think they'll look at the deed." Claire hesitated. Then grabbed her phone like she needed to follow through on the threat. Mark shifted uncomfortably. "Claire, maybe." But she was already dialing. I stepped onto the porch and waited. When the patrol car arrived, the lights weren't flashing. It was almost disappointingly ordinary. 2 officers stepped out, polite but alert. Claire launched into her version immediately. "She's trying to force us out of our home." One officer looked at me. "Ma'am, do you own this property?" "Yes," I said. "Sole owner." I handed him the copy of the deed I kept in the glove compartment for insurance purposes. My name was the only one on it. They stepped aside to run the information. Claire's posture began to falter in small increments. Her shoulders lowered. Her voice softened. The officer returned after several minutes. "Madam," he said to Claire, "the property is legally owned by your sister. If you're here without a lease or written agreement, you're considered occupants at her discretion." Claire swallowed. "We've been here for months." "That doesn't override ownership," he replied calmly. "She can issue formal notice. If you refuse, it becomes a trespassing matter." The words landed like dropped glass. No yelling, no drama. Just process. Mark looked at me then, not angry. Just calculating the inconvenience. The officers explained next steps. 30 days written notice if I chose that route. Immediate removal if there was evidence of unlawful entry. I kept it measured. "I'll provide written notice," I said. Claire's face flushed. "You'd really do that to your own sister?" I met her eyes evenly. "You did this to yourself." That was the only sharp thing I said. By the time the patrol car left, the house felt different. Not reclaimed yet, but clarified. I didn't ask them to pack that night. I simply told Claire I would have the notice delivered Monday morning. She didn't argue again. As I walked through the house later, I touched the mantel where my dad's photograph used to sit. I found it in a drawer in the spare room, face down. I set it back where it belonged. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. Boundaries aren't loud. They're quiet lines you decide not to let anyone step across again. The lake outside was still. The fairy lights flickered weakly against the railing. I left them there for now. Some things don't need to be ripped down immediately. Some things just need to be seen clearly.